Dinner was already set when we arrived. The long table gleamed under the chandelier, crystal, silver, a performance of family. My son, Evan, 8 years old and holding his fork like a question mark, stood beside me. He was hungry. We'd rushed. My sister, Taryn, glanced at him, then smoothed her linen napkin. "He can eat after," she said, her voice casual, surgical, once the real family's done. The words didn't echo. They sank into the tablecloth, into the wine, into the marrow of the room. No one laughed. No one gasped. Forks paused mid-air. Glasses hovered. My mother looked at her lap. My father studied his cutlery. An uncle cleared his throat, then thought better of it. They heard it, each and every one, and they chose the silence of complicity. Evan looked up at me, his cheeks flushing that terrible hot red of childish shame. His eyes asked, "What did I do?" My mouth opened, a defense rising like a tide. But my grandfather stopped me. He didn't shout. He didn't even look at Karen. He simply set his fork down. The click of silver on porcelain was softer than a heartbeat, but it fractured the room. "Is that so?" he asked, his voice like gravel and velvet. Karen shrugged, a practiced, dismissive motion. "It's not a big deal. The kids' table is in the kitchen. He can wait." My grandfather, Walter, leaned back in his chair. The old wood creaked a protest. He looked at Evan, at the table laden with food that suddenly looked garish, at the faces of his own children, my parents, aunts, uncles, all masters of looking away. He folded his napkin, slowly, deliberately, a ritual. Then he stood. He didn't leave. He let his presence fill the silence he'd created. Karen shifted, the first flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. She was used to being the axis this family spun around. "You're overreacting," she tried, a brittle smile on her lips. "It was just a joke." Grandpa Walter finally looked at her, not with anger, with a sadness so deep it was condemnation. "A joke?" he repeated. The word flat is when everyone laughs, not when a child learns his place is elsewhere. He reached for Evan's small chair and pulled it out. The legs scraped the floor, a sound of finality. He placed it squarely at the main table, right between his own seat and mine. "Sit," he told Evan, not a request, a decree. Evan hesitated, his eyes darting to Karen's stony face. Then he sat, so small in the high-backed chair. My grandfather took Evan's empty plate, the one meant for after, and served him first. A slice of roast, glazed carrots, buttery potatoes, a mountain of belonging. Karen served herself first without thinking, Grandpa said, his words aimed at the adults, not the boy. A host serves their guests. A family feeds its children. He placed the full plate in front of Evan. "Eat." No one else moved. The feast was now a still life. Karen's mouth opened. "Dad, you're being—" He raised a single finger. Just one. It was more powerful than a shout. "This table," he said, each word a brick laid in a new foundation, "is for family. Anyone who decides otherwise can finish their meals somewhere else." He picked up his own fork, but didn't use it. He waited. One by one, under the weight of that quiet justice, eyes fell. My mother nudged the basket of rolls toward Evan. My uncle passed the butter. A silent, shameful correction. The dinner didn't continue, it transformed. It became a tribunal where the only sound was Evan's careful chewing and the deafening roar of everyone else's conscience. Karen was the first to break. She stood, her chair squeaking against the floor. "I don't have to be lectured in my own home." "You don't," Grandpa agreed, still seated, still calm. "But you do have to be kind, or you have to be alone. Those are the options." She left the room. The click of her heels on the hallway tile was the period at the end of her sentence. Grandpa watched her go, then turned to Evan. "You did nothing wrong," he said, his voice softening for the first time. "Never let anyone make you beg for a seat at the table. You belong wherever you are." Then he stood, pushing his own chair in. "I've lost my appetite." "Walter, please," my grandmother whispered, her first words of the night. He touched her shoulder gently. "I'm not angry, my love. I'm tired of watching cruelty wear a party dress." He looked at the rest of us, his gaze a sweeping verdict. "When you protect a bully to keep the peace, all you're doing is loaning her your silence, and she always spends it on someone smaller." Then he left. The front door didn't slam, it sighed shut. The silence he left behind was absolute. The food congealed on the plates. The real family dinner was dead. The revenge wasn't loud. It wasn't a scene. It was an absence, a void where his presence, his approval, his foundational love had always been. In the days that followed, the family fractured along the fault line he'd exposed. Karen played the martyr. The group chats buzzed with her version. "Grandpa humiliated me over a misunderstanding? He's too old, too sensitive." My mother, the eternal peacekeeper, called me. "Can't you talk to him? Can't we just apologize and move on?" "Apologize to who?" I asked. She fell silent. Evan, in the beautiful, brutal way of children, distilled it to its essence. "Does Aunt Karen not like me?" "It's not about liking," I said, choosing my words like stepping stones. "It's about power, and Grandpa just took hers away." He thought about that. "Good," he said, and went back to his Lego. Grandpa Walter didn't apologize. He didn't explain. He simply withdrew. He declined the next Sunday dinner, and the next. His absence was a quiet, persistent rebuke that filled more space than his presence ever had. Without him, the gatherings felt hollow. The real family was missing its patriarch. The authority Karen had wielded was revealed to be borrowed, a reflection of his light. With that light gone, she was just a woman in an empty dining room. The true revenge unfolded in slow, subtle acts. My parents began inviting us over separately, for lunches, for baking days, always making sure Evan was included, fed first, celebrated. They were trying to build a new memory to overwrite the old one. Karen's invitations dried up. When she did host, people declined, politely, vaguely. "So sorry, we have plans." The social currency of her dinners had been devalued overnight. A month later, at my grandmother's birthday brunch, Karen tried to reclaim her narrative. She made a show of setting a special place for the kids at a small decorative table. Grandpa Walter arrived late. He took one look at the setup, kissed Grandma on the cheek, placed his gift on the table, and turned to leave. "Walter, you just got here," my grandmother pleaded. "I see the seating chart hasn't changed," he said, his voice carrying. "My seat appears to be with the children. I'd be honored, but I think today I'll dine where the company is kinder." He left. Half the guests followed him within the hour, making excuses about sudden headaches, forgotten obligations. Karen sat at the head of her half-empty table, surrounded by cold quiche and the chilling realization that her power had been a shadow, and the sun had just moved. The final, quiet act of revenge was mine. That Christmas, I hosted. I set one long table, no kids' table, no hierarchy. I placed Grandpa Walter at the head. I sat Evan right beside him. Karen came, stiff and smiling. She saw the seating arrangement, her eyes flashing with understanding. She was seated in the middle, flanked by cousins, neutral territory. She was no longer the gatekeeper of belonging. When the food was served, Grandpa looked at Evan. "You're hungry, young man?" Evan nodded, grinning. "Then let's eat." And without looking at anyone else, he passed the first platter directly to his great-grandson. It was a tiny gesture, a silent passing of the torch, a rewriting of the rules in real time. Everyone saw it, and everyone served Evan next. The pattern was set, the new law was established. Grandpa ate her meal in silence. Her reign was over, not toppled by a war, but made obsolete by a new constitution written in simple acts of inclusion. After that, everything changed, not because there was a dramatic reconciliation, but because the source of poison had been identified and isolated. The family reorganized itself around healthier roots. Grandpa Walter didn't gloat. He just returned to his seat at the head of my table week after week, his presence a gentle, unwavering reminder. This is how it's done. The last I heard from Karen was a birthday card for Evan, a year later. It was generic. She signed it Aunt Karen. No love, just a name. Evan looked at it, then at me. Should I thank her? I said, that's up to you. What do you feel? He thought about it, then put the card in his drawer, unopened. He said, I feel like dinner's ready, and ran to the table where Grandpa was already waiting, a place set and a smile offered freely. That was the revenge. Not a scorched earth, but a reclaimed garden. Not a shout, but a new, enduring silence where cruelty was no longer welcome. It was the empty chair at Karen's table and the full, beloved chair at mine. Grandpa Walter taught us all a lesson that night. Sometimes the most powerful action is not to fight for your seat at a toxic table. It's to build a new one and let the old one sit empty. A monument to what happens when you forget that family isn't a privilege you grant, it's a circle you protect. And the smallest among us, they never wait to eat again.